Okay, this is Andy Graham, hobo traveler. I've traveled perpetually, non-stop for over 16 years, been to 90 countries. Tim wants to know what what I should buy, 240 or 120 volt equipment. I'm not sure if that's not supposed to be 220 or 110, but not important. But you have two different types of electricity on the planet. The truth of it, I hardly ever know anymore which country I'm in. Because most of my equipment, you're going to have cell phones and things like that, and if you read this label here, you got to read it, it's really small, but if you read these labels on these equipment, it'll say 220, 110, and or 220, you know, what does it got, 240, 120, but whatever the case is, you read those little labels, and if you're going to buy a battery charger, a cell phone, whatever, there's kind of a lag in knowledge. It's like something that was big deal 50 years ago is still being perpetuated, and you know, equipment, 110 equipment being carried abroad. Most of your electronic stuff is 110, 220, and you don't have to worry about it. That's why I don't even know what it is half the time in the country I'm at. And then but, you know, these lags are real problems. It's like, you know, because something that was really promoted, you know, 30 years ago is still being promoted and still being repeated by travel writers today. One of the big ones that is really stupid is the idea of taking a photo and it's going to steal my soul. You hear that from a travel writer, you really get a life. Okay, everybody knows what a camera is, and they all got cell phones and they're taking pictures. Okay, now electronic equipment is your number one thing you're going to carry, and if you're going to go live abroad, oh yeah, no, that's a different problem. A lot of people in the Caribbean, you got to be real careful in the Caribbean because they'll actually give you one. They got so many Americans coming there with like things like hair dryers and stuff, and they just wanker dead. And so they'll literally give you a 110 plug, okay? Well, you know, when you're putting 110 and a 220, and if you put a 110 thing into a 220, you're in trouble because it's the bigger number. So hair dryers are your big one, little iron things. These are things that, you know, not really travelers carry, but, you know, people that are leaving for 1 week vacations. Don't really know much about how to buy them, but bottom line is, if I could, I would buy the 221, and the 221 put into a 110 plug just heats slower. So any kind of heating element, whether it's a hair, well, you don't want a hair dryer because it's got a motor, but a motor going can burn up. But most of these one coffee cooker things, you want to buy a 220. If you buy a hot plate, you want to buy a 221 because it'll still work in 110. It'll just be really a little less hot, right? This will work in 110. This is a 221. The big problem people have, and you know, is these kind of plugs, right? I call it the German plug, but you know, they're different. You know, they're different than the thing. And so you're going to have an extension cord or adapters. And it's really not a problem. You don't need to buy that universal adapter. It's got all these different parts. It really don't work. What you want to do is have you know, when you get on the ground in the country, buy a couple adapters. I have all different things. There's a playlist on electrical equipment, and I make a universal adapter that's really universal. Most of the adapters, you lose one part, you're screwed. But all I really do is plug in my extension cord. I make sure my extension cord serves as the adapter for all the other stuff. But, you know, basically you're going to buy 220 stuff if it's a heating element, and electronics is really quite easy anymore because it's, you know, already adapted. Carrying along converters and inverters and all this stuff is only maybe something you might want to do if you own a place and you're living in a place for year in, year out. That's a different problem, okay? It's not a travel problem, it's a living problem. So you're trying to adapt some kind of equipment you have in America. You know, the reason why people do this is it's cheap to buy a microwave in America and bring it to a Caribbean island, and you can buy it for half the price, right? Because anything in America is cheap anything in Europe and most of the planet is. So a microwave can cost more here in Africa than it does in America. I mean, America is really lucky. Okay, but you're not going to have that problem. So just go through your thing, check the labels, make sure it says 110, 220. When you try to buy something, try to get the double thing. And normally when it's got that little, let's see if I can show you one. Yeah, I can show you one. When you got this little thing on the end, that's an adapter. The thing in the cord for the extension cord. These little things are adapters. They're almost always going to be a 110, 220 type adapter. So you see this kind of plug on the end, you're safe normally. But you better read the fine print, right? While I'm talking, if you get one of these things, try to get one with a light. And the light will let you know that it's actually plugged in good, because a lot of plugs in the planet are sloppy. You really want your. It's really nice to have a little plug on the end, a little light that tells you that tells you that the connection's good. Because sometimes you think you got it plugged in, but you don't know if you did. Okay, that's the bottom line. Most of the time you guys are dealing with some kind of long-term father told you something and do it. But remember, if somebody tells you about taking a photo is going to steal their soul, I'm not saying it can't be happening, it's not possible, people don't like photos, but the object, most people know what that is. And really, if you hear a travel writer write that, he is just playing games, I hope, or he's really not very smart. Okay, Andy Graham, Hobo Traveler in Kara, Togo, West Africa. I'm going to take off for Dapong, Togo in the north here today, and spend a week up there, and it's going to be a little more difficult to rattle these videos out while I'm doing it. But ask questions, hoboontheroad@yahoo.com. Send me your questions. Simple. One question per email. Put a subject, make it simple for me to file and monitor. Really long emails are not so good, just short, one question. Andy Graham, Hobo Traveler.